Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Bar Association of Norfolk County's Person of the Year, Judge Beverly Cannone.
Your Honor, with regard to Trooper Paul, Mr. Brennan did not address 80% of the slides that I addressed that showed the basis. When he talked about the picture, making it seem like the picture is the only thing we're relying upon, there's clearly other items. But even the picture, Your Honor, the purpose of the picture is it's got the odometer reading. That's why they took the picture, and that's the tether. So the photo is completely relevant. It's not who's in it. It's the fact that that's the odometer reading they're using. Next point with regard to case law. Mr. Brennan presents none to go against the common sense law that has been there for years. The other thing, Your Honor, is with regard to Mr. Brennan keeps trying to put my arguments into a credibility, like we're trying to attack the credibility of Trooper Paul. He says that we're trying to redo last trial. To the contrary, Your Honor, it's the Commonwealth that brought Trooper Paul into the second trial through Dr. Welcher and Dr. Welcher's reliance on all the work of Trooper Paul. They've brought it in here, and because of that, we get the right to cross-examine it. Last point. This is not about credibility. He keeps saying something that's not happening, that we're going to attack the credibility of Trooper Paul. What we want to do is to say to Dr. Welcher, you have brought up Trooper Paul. You have used his odometer reading. That odometer reading tethers through to Google. It tethers through everything you're doing. It's the foundation. But what you're ignoring, Dr. Welcher, are all the key cycle results that come from that odometer reading that you relied upon. Dr. Welcher himself can't cherry pick, grab things that he needs from Trooper Paul to do his analysis, and then the Commonwealth say, but you can't go after that because it somehow has Trooper Paul's name on it. It's illogical, Your Honor, and it's incorrect under the law. Thank you.
So I disagree with you, Mr. Alessi. I'm not allowing in the line of questioning regarding Trooper Paul, and I'm not allowing the line of questioning regarding Dr. Scordi-Bello. So that's my ruling. Let's bring the jury in.
What she did today might take the cake as the single most corrupt decision that she has made, and I say that on purpose. This was a corrupt decision. This was a decision that kept the jury from absolutely definitively understanding that Karen Reed did not hit John O'Keefe, that this entire testimony of Judd Welcher is built on absurdity. You have heard me screaming from the rooftops many times over about the key cycle data. And more than any other piece of evidence in this entire case, the fact that the Commonwealth continues to go back to key cycle 1162, okay, which absolutely came from Trooper Paul's report. So the fact that this judge is not letting the defense question this witness about it, it is such an egregious miscarriage of justice, and there can be no question that this judge is in on the joke. No question. No question. There is no legal basis for her rationale. She obviously does not like Mr. Alessi. She treats him like he's an infant. She openly mocks him in court. She has the patience of an 11-year-old, and my 11-year-old has a lot more patience than her. Let me tell you, she is not equipped to be the judge on this case.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I often hesitate to use the word corruption in conjunction with this case because I think to those who are newer to this case, it implies that these people believe that Karen Reed is innocent and therefore are trying to frame her, are trying to make her seem guilty. I don't believe that at all. I believe these people are suffering from what amounts to a shared delusional disorder. Now, before you think I'm crazy for saying that, a shared delusional disorder is very rare. It's not something you see often, and it is typically associated with, let's say, Aboriginal communities in remote places around the world, where, for example, instead of going to a medical professional to cure your cancer or illness, you go to a witch doctor. And the belief is the witch doctor is what will cure my cancer or my disease. Okay. So from the Western perspective, we might say that that's a shared delusional disorder. Everybody in this community believes it, even though there's no credible evidence, even though we can't actually say from a scientific perspective, through the scientific method, through rigorous testing of theories and outcomes, that this is true, that this claim is credible. Norfolk County is suffering from a shared delusional disorder. These people have got it in their head that Karen Reed is guilty of murdering a police officer, and they are ignoring any and all evidence to the contrary. Early on, they got it in their head that Karen Reed did this. And despite all of the incest in terms of the relationships, the friendships, the fact that Brian Tully played college sports with Paul O'Keefe, the fact that Michael Proctor's family was very, very close to the Albert family, the fact that the judge has all kinds of shady connections, not only to the district attorney's office, but to witnesses in this case. These things are just systematically ignored like they don't matter. And let me also say that I am now convinced that Judge Beverly Cannone was handpicked for this case by her good buddy, lifelong, and probably family friend, Mr. Michael Morrissey, who, despite the fact that I am not a voting citizen of the state of Massachusetts, I will make it my life's mission to make sure is taken out of office.
Be nice to free Karen Reed. She's not free.
Because he is responsible for the majority of this. I am sure of it. He hand selected his good friend and pal, Judge Beverly Cannone, who I am convinced something is very wrong with this woman. She is not well. Now, from what I can tell about this judge, and this is tragic, and I am not putting her down because of this, I am just noting these things. It appears to me that there used to be 6 siblings in this family, and 2 of them have been tragically lost prematurely at very young stages in their lives. She had a sister who passed away, I believe, in 2015, and she had an older brother, I think, right around her age, who passed away last year in August of 2024, in the middle of all of this, right after this first trial wrapped. So I feel for this woman. She probably is enduring a sense of grief in her personal life. I certainly would be if I had just lost my, big brother or my little brother. Like, I would be devastated. I am sure that's devastating. I'm sure losing a sister, 7-8 years ago prematurely, I'm sure that is devastating. I feel for this woman. Okay, I do. I want to address one more thing. Several people have made comments to me that Judge Bev has a drinking problem. I have no way to determine whether that's true. I have no evidence of that except for her behavior in the courtroom. And let me tell you what I mean. One of the hallmarks of addiction is the inability to remain in the here and now, because Once somebody is engaged in a real addiction, biologically, their body is always trying to get to the next time they're going to get high, have a drink. They're always looking ahead to the next, to the next, to the next. It's like they're rushing through time until they can get back to that moment where they're reacquainted with the drink or the drug. And while that may sound crazy, if you have ever had a substance use disorder, you know exactly what I am talking about. It is a hallmark of a substance use disorder. And what I can tell you with 100% certainty is every single day, that is what we see from this judge. She is so impatient. She has these very rigid times in her mind, and she starts as they get closer to get more agitated, a little bit more irritable, a little bit more short-tempered. And yes, okay, we know from scientific studies that judges have been known to be persuaded to see things differently before lunch versus after lunch because they're hungry. I'll tell you that all along, I kind of assumed that because in my head is that study about how judges behave before and after lunch. However, if this woman was calculating each minute until she could get home to have that drink, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, that after work drink, if that was true, what we see from her 100% aligns with someone who would have a drinking problem. She's short-tempered. She's irritable. She's irritated. She's easily irritated. She makes rulings like her voice sometimes will shake when she makes a ruling, almost like she's angry, like hostile towards Robert Alessi in particular, Alan Jackson up until then. Now she's got a new enemy up until now, up until this case. It's been Alan Jackson. Now Robert Alessi is the person she obviously can't stand. She has no patience for him. And one of the reasons why she has no patience for him is because he's so thorough. He's methodical. Isn't that the way a good attorney should be? Should good attorneys be rushing through what they're doing? Should they not be carefully taking the time to analyze what they want to say, to listen to the responses from the witnesses, and then respond accordingly? Should we be tailoring how much time we allow for each witness so that the judge get home in time for her 5 o'clock drink? Another hallmark of a substance use disorder is an axe to grind. So studies were done years ago on personality traits that are common to people with a substance use disorder. Now, these traits, I will tell you, often maybe predispose someone's substance use disorder. So they're there before. They're exacerbated by the chronic use of substances. However, if someone is to commit to a recovery, to become someone who is recovered from a substance use disorder, these traits can subside can largely subside. And here's what these three traits are: entitlement, impulsivity, and defiance. I call these the big three, the personality traits common to substance use disorders. I will let you decide whether those three traits appear to align with Miss Judge Beverly Cannone. And while I am not saying that this woman is an alcoholic, I will not say that. I would not say that without absolute evidence that that is the case. But what I can tell you is if she was someone with a substance use disorder, what we're seeing from her behavior in this courtroom would match, would certainly make it all make sense.
The
cars report of Trooper Paul on your computer? Think so?
You remember the name of it?
I don't. We'll do it there with the hard copy. Mr. Brennan, I'd like to show this one. Thank you. So, if I could, Coach. Yep. So you see what I'm pointing to right here, which is page 10 of Trooper Paul's cars report. You see that?
I do. Is this the same report dated 1/29/2022?
I believe so, sir. Let me just take a peek. This is, you can just compare. This is the one I have in my hand. Take it and look for any identification that gives you. The same or substantially the same as the chart that is up on your slide presentation.
Yes, it
right
is.
now.
So it's not the same. I did not use this data at all, but we both use Google Maps.
Okay. All right. Mr. Wolf, we go to slides 22 and 23.
Okay, and this will be the last on this, Mr. Lessie. If you want to get to the autopsy photo, we're wrapping this all up at 4:10.
Okay, Your Honor. Inside the vehicle doing what's depicted here.
Someone is inside the vehicle taking a photograph.
What's your best conclusion as to who that is?
Trooper Paul.
Thank you.
God.
Your Honor, that is,
Okay, so next topic.
yes,
Go right
thank you.
ahead.
And I just need to reload, if you will, with regard to that topic.
Oh, she just rolled her eyes before doing a deep sigh.
Whatever is going on in her personal life, the way that she is handling this case is going to follow her to her grave. She's going to regret the day that she agreed to take on the Karen Reed case. So what is a shared delusional disorder? In the DSM-5, this diagnosis has been upgraded or shifted from shared delusional disorder to a shared psychotic disorder. And it is considered a very rare disorder that is characterized by sharing a delusion among two or more people in a close relationship. Typically, it is seen as a kind of byproduct of somebody who does have a psychotic disorder like schizophrenia. So someone who has some kind of delusional belief, psychotic belief, and then as a result shares that belief with others, with other individuals, maybe let's say family members, such that they all believe, despite evidence to the contrary, is true. I'm not sure that we could have a more clear example of this in a community than we do here in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. So much so that what this group of people who think that they are, number one, better than the rest of us, and number two, who think that they are right and are absolutely refusing to consider any information that does not comport with what they believe. It doesn't matter what the facts of the case are. It doesn't matter that Karen Reed was not in possession of the vehicle at key cycle 1162. This is not a debate. This is a fact, an absolute fact, okay? It cannot be disputed. Yesterday in court, Alessi brought up a cognitive bias. And of course, Welcher, I don't know. I'm not an expert on cognition. Clearly, sir. A cognitive bias is a perceptual bias, okay? It is a bias that literally blocks out one's ability to perceive reality clearly. Now, in fairness, we all have these kinds of biases. It's the reason why, as a lifelong Yankee fan, if I was to be on an Alaskan cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, and I saw somewhere on the ship, way off in a distance, somebody wearing a pinstripe jersey with a number 2 on the back, I would immediately think, oh, there's a friend. While the person next to me who wouldn't know who Derek Jeter was if he threw a baseball at their face would never see that jersey, would never pick out that person in a crowd, and would care less about the fact that no matter where they are in the world, they have a friend, okay? That is a cognitive bias. It is a perceptual bias that gets carved out of our visual or sensory field because it is important to us. And the way that the brain works, it carefully sifts and sorts to look for information that is important to you and dismiss information that isn't. And that is a part of our design to conserve energy, because the conservation of energy is the law of survival. Your brain and body all day long does everything it can to maintain efficiency so that you are conserving energy. And that is the survival principle. These people are currently suffering from a delusional disorder, a cognitive bias. And when I say these people, let me be very, very clear who I'm talking about. I am not talking about the Alberts and the McCabe's. I am not talking about Brian Higgins, Colin Albert, Chris Albert, Julie Albert, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Allie McCabe, Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe. Those are not the people I'm talking about. And I must be very clear about that. Those people have a whole nother thing happening. So when I talk about this shared psychotic disorder, I am talking about law enforcement. I am talking about Michael Morrissey and his minions. It has no basis in reality, and it fundamentally ignores any and all evidence that contradicts the inconvenient truth of their reality. And let me tell you, there is a mountain of evidence that they must overlook in order to get to that outcome. And if today's charade by this corrupt judge does not highlight that, nothing else ever will. Look at Peg O'Keefe's reaction to this judge's ruling, because even she understood that it was not the right decision. Even Peg O'Keefe knew that this judge was making a biased decision, that it was not a rational choice, that she doesn't like Mr. Alessi. She doesn't like the fact that Alessi points out that what she's doing is wrong. And just like every other law enforcement person in this county, she doubles down whenever she's challenged. These people are ignorant. They are fundamentally brainwashed. They are delusional. And it is a dangerous place to live. This is a dangerous place to live. If you are living in Norfolk County, God help you, because these are the people in charge. Hank Brennan and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is distorting reality, doing everything they can to delude the jury, to make them think that this isn't the case. They offer no explanation, mind you, for how this isn't the case. And Hank Brennan is fighting so hard against the defense's ability to ask questions of this witness, Dr. Welcher, because he knows that this is a fact. It is an inconvenient fact for him. And in the end, he is not going to get around it. These people do not care about reality. They do not care about the facts of the case. They care about one thing and one thing only, and that is to make sure that Karen Reed is convicted of killing police officer John O'Keefe, no matter what the evidence says or does. We're being asked to just ignore fundamentally the uncomfortable reality that when this taillight was found on the evening of January 29th, 2022, the person who is normally in charge of the CERT team, Kevin O'Hara, was taking his orders from Lieutenant Brian Tully, Michael Morrissey's lead minion.
Were there other people in the area outside the scene or the grid that you were going to search, other than you and members of your CERT team?
Lieutenant Tully arrived on scene.
Was there anybody with Lieutenant Tully?
At one point, he had several other people with him. Maybe, I believe, 5 throughout our search. Maybe 5 different people, including him, were on scene.
Were those people part of state police?
At least 1, maybe 2. Unfortunately, I don't recognize all 2,500 members in our department, but there were probably about 5 total people on scene, sir.
Was there somebody who was picking up any evidence that you may find and putting it in bags and preserving it?
After we found located evidence, it was documented on scene by the detectives.
So you yourself were not documenting?
No, and again, that's maybe a little change in the dynamics. You know, if I had been more of in an incident commander role, I probably would have documented time, location. Again, more for our internal records. The primary record will always be at the hands of the detectives. But because I was actively searching, the detectives handled all documentation.
So when these items were found, did you examine or study the depth of those items when they were found?
I did not, sir. Gave them a glance when our team members told us we found something, and then Lieutenant Tully took over documentation. I returned to my place, on our line. We will mark items, sir. Okay. Measuring in between distances, they do get stamped when we mark our items. Measuring them would be at the discretion of the investigators themselves.
And obviously that would be among the best practices to clearly document how a search is conducted, correct?
Correct, sir.
Another way to document the evidence or the search is to do it through either video evidence or photographic techniques, right? Just photographing, forensic photographs of where things are found, contextual photographs moving into close-up photographs, correct?
That would be at the discretion of the detective, sir.
And in this case, that discretion lay with Lieutenant Tully, correct?
Yeah, he was the incident commander, correct?
Brian Tully had 5 guys, some of whom were covered from head to toe so they could never be identified. And we have no documented evidence of who found what, where.
I just wanted to touch on the CERT team searching, especially one of the individuals that are standing there. Why does this guy look like he's in a gimp suit? He is so covered up you can't see any features of him whatsoever. Another observation, all of these taillight pieces are on top of the snow, and we know that at the time they're claiming there would have barely been any snow on the ground, so all of these pieces should have been in touch, like actually touching the grass, but they're not. They're always on top of the snow. Now look how little the snow was at that time. There's barely any snow covering the grass, barely any even on the asphalt, but the ground is probably a little warmer. Here's the area where they were searching, the CERT team. Even here you see them walking around the fire hydrant, and that's where they found the biggest piece. So why didn't they find it then?
And why was it near the fire
and here's
hydrant?
The area that they dug out. That is not very much at all.
Look at the whole yard untouched.
They're not even down to the grass.
They don't
How could they even say they
search
searched?
the entire yard.
They should have been all the way down to bare grass. This is just ridiculous. That little area with all of those guys, that's just ridiculous. I don't know what to make of it. But they certainly knew exactly where they were looking. And then we get to the hat once again. That hat looks like it was purposely brushed all the way down to the grass. The way it's looking right there, it just does not look natural whatsoever.
And it's not because this group of investigators do not know how to investigate properly. There's a reason why they didn't call crime scene services to come out and carefully sift through the snow and carefully take measurements of where all the taillight pieces were in relationship to where the body would have been. There's a reason why legitimate scientists were never brought into this case. And there's a reason why Brian Tully remains at the side of every witness for the Commonwealth. He is picking up Judd Welcher at the airport on Memorial Day weekend. He's the guy contacting Shannon Burgess, contacting Judd Welcher. He's by the side of firefighter Nuttall. He's by the side of Lieutenant Gallagher, Carrie Roberts, Jen McCabe. He is by the side of every witness in this case. In the meetings with Hank Brennan, other than to potentially intimidate witnesses into saying what it is that he needs them to say to make sure that Karen Read is convicted. If you can't see what is happening here, I don't know what to tell you. What we are witnessing is corruption, because despite any and all evidence to the contrary, these people are acting out of ego, arrogance, and absolute bias. That is what makes Norfolk County, the prosecutor's office, and all of these law enforcement professionals corrupt.
An attorney may take reasonable steps to defend a client's reputation and reduce the adverse consequences of an indictment, especially in the face of a prosecution deemed unjust or commenced with improper motives. Those are not my words, Your Honor. Those are the words of Supreme Court Justice Kennedy giving the majority opinion in the controlling case of Gentile versus State Bar of Nevada.
Your Honor, my purpose is not to deprive the defense of an expert. So you assisted the defense in anticipation of your testimony by sharing with them the questions and answers you thought would be most helpful.
Again, as I mentioned, this is something that I do internally to prepare. I sent that to him the evening before I testified at 6 p.m. I presume that he already had his direct examination done at that point. So I sent that to him, yes.
That's a lot of answers other than the one for my question. Deprive the defense of an ARCA expert in this case. But there has to be a minimum requirement of reciprocal discovery and discovery before a party can call a witness.
The version of the presentation that you put on the screen, when did you create that version? I'm just looking for a date.
So to answer your question about the version on the screen, I created that yesterday when the judge asked me to take off some of the headers. So yesterday.
Okay, good. Now, the version before that you created yesterday, when did you create that version?
The day before.
And then the version before that one, when did you create that?
I mean, I save it every day.
Understood.
So every day.
So you've changed the presentation every day since when?
No, I don't think I've changed the presentation every day.
That's my question. My question is, how many times have you changed it within the last 2 weeks, your presentation?
Let me try and cut to the chase here.
Sure.
That slide was added on May 13th.
So it was suggested to you by the prosecution that you look at the clip and they pointed out that there was an alternative route they wanted you to look at?
So I took it to be, we have additional evidence. Please look at the additional evidence.
It's not enough to say that the witness is helpful or unhelpful. There has to be full disclosure when calling an expert. Well, what the government worries about is that there is other things that are relevant, like compensation, promise, reward, inducement, whether there's collaboration between one side or the other.
Isn't it the case that that amendment authorized the amount of $325,000 to be paid to Aperture? Isn't that what that amendment contract states?
I believe that's correct.
So the Commonwealth is obligated to pay at least $325,000, and is that correct?
That is you're asking me a legal opinion now about a contract. That is my understanding of how contracts work, but I'm certainly not an attorney.
As for me, Your Honor, I have 3 words for this court. 3 words forming one question. How dare they? How dare the prosecution try to prohibit defense counsel from doing our jobs? How dare they ask this court to take away our First Amendment right to free speech? How dare they try to trample on my client's Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial and their 14th Amendment rights to due process of law? How dare they?
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.